What's up, everyone? Jeremy Gerard from Mythic Customs here with one of my short customizing tutorial videos. Today's video, we're going to talk about a paint match for the Mythic Legions Scaphoid figure. This is this guy right here, the greenish yellowish poison skeleton. Actually, when this figure was first introduced and first teased, originally as part of the Mythic Legions Covenant of Shadow wave, the original name for it was actually Poison Skeleton before we got his full name Scaphoid. This figure has been re-released recently as part of the Mythic Legions All-Stars 4 assortment. So this is a figure that is somewhat readily available for fans and customizers now. As such, some of the cool custom parts that are being created can be used with this particular figure. And recently, I painted up a couple cool skull heads that are offered at legionshop.com specifically to go with this figure. I have one right here. So this is a cool Wendigo head that we sell at Legion Shop. This comes actually in ogre scale, but it also comes in this 1.0 scale. So this is a head that I helped design. It was sculpted by Tristan at Immortal Collections, and it's printed by Noble Bear Customs, sold at Legion Shop. So I recently painted this thing up to match Scaphoid here and thought it was a really fun kind of addition to this character. I actually have a better photo here. I did both the Wendigo, and I also did our demon skull that we offer as well. And in each of these cases, I painted it with that yellowish green to match the Scaphoid figure. So as soon as I posted this, a number of people reached out and they said, hey, what is the paint match that you actually use for Scaphoid? I've seen a number of people asking this. Whenever I hear a lot of people asking the same question, while I'm happy to answer them individually, I know that it's also a good topic to shoot a video like this to convey that information. So that's what we're going to cover today. Now, one of the nice things about Scaphoid, and I'll put his original head back on, one of the nice things about Scaphoid, both in terms of bone color and the armor color, is it's a really messy figure. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm not saying that it came from the factory not looking its best. It's an awesome looking figure. Like any Mythic Legions, the paint applications are wonderful. But because of the design of the figure, it's not a super clean design. So unlike, say, another of the figures in the Mythic Legions All-Stars 4 wave, Sir Owain. Sir Owain, that silver knight, silver with gold and black highlights, that's a very clean figure. All of the colors are nice and smooth, very, very crisp. Contrast that to this character here, and the armor, as you would expect from a skeleton, is kind of dirty and dingy looking. The bones, the colors on the bones, there's a variety of different kind of colors. If you compare a number of Scaphoid figures, you're going to realize that the paint has some variance in terms of how it is actually applied. If you look at that head right there, the yellows and the greens, there's a lot of different variance to that color. So whenever you're trying to match a figure, because paint matching is one of the more challenging aspects of customizing, but whenever you're trying to match something that's got that degree of variance, that's great, because that means that you don't have to be perfect for it to look good. As long as you're kind of close, you'll probably be able to nail it. So we're going to paint a couple things today. I'm going to show you what I do. So the first thing that I do whenever I'm painting a custom piece, and I've got a couple custom pieces here that I'm going to paint, I always start with a black base coat. I've done videos about this, done a number of videos about this. My trusty old Krylon matte black, hit that with a black base coat. A lot of people ask me, do I use primer? I don't use primer only because every time I've done it, it seems to have more of a tacky type feel. So I just do a base coat of black spray paint and use that almost in place of primer. So I've got a couple pieces here. I've actually got a fun vampire head that was actually it was sculpted by Immortal Collections. And then I've got this cool skeleton head with this helmet on it. This skeleton is a piece from Wolf King Customs. This was designed by Len LaGuardia and sculpted by Gian Luca, I believe his name is. So it's a super cool piece. Now, both of these already have some paint on them, as you could see when I held them up there. They started with that black base coat. For the purposes of this, I wanted to show you how I got to that point, and then we're going to do some painting. So the first thing that you're going to want to do when you match Scaphoid is grab Scaphoid. Have this next to you because this is your base here. Let's start with the bones. If you look at that head, if you look at the colors of that head and really study it, what you're going to find is there's almost like a lime green base that has some more brilliant yellow on top of it. Now, there's a number of ways that you can do this. Well, actually, recently when I saw someone asking about the paint recipe to match Scaphoid, I saw a number of people in the Mythic Legions cabal offer their suggestions, and they were all different suggestions in terms of the paint you can use. That's one of the cool things is there's no one solution for this. I'm just going to share how I do it. So what I want to do first is I want to get that lime greenish type color. And the way that I do it, you could buy a lime green paint, certainly. I don't have a lime green paint. It's not something I generally have a call for, so I've never purchased one. So instead, I'm going to make my own. The two paints colors that I've been using, number one, and again, I tend to use Vallejo paints. That's just the brand that I started with, so it's the brand I prefer. But I use Vallejo 970 Deep Green. That's the first one I'm going to use. And the next one, I'm going to mix that with Vallejo 952. That's lemon yellow. And I'm actually going to use this one a few times. But what I find is I mix this about 1 part green to 2 parts yellow. Okay, so I put a little bit of green and then I put double that amount of yellow and I mix it in. Now, this is not an exact science, at least it's not when I do it. There's a lot of painters out there that are way more meticulous when it comes to their paint recipes. That's not me. I'm someone who just wings it and kind of guesses a lot, but this is what I've been doing. I've painted this paint match a number of times. Actually, I'll show you another picture here. Even before these recent skulls, I had done a number of other paint matches for Scaphoid in the past. So here's a couple examples. On the far left, that's my spider skeleton head that I recently paint matched to Scaphoid. And then there's a couple others there that I used to paint match quite some time ago as part of a series of customs I did called the Ghosts of Caramore. I imagined these characters, the Scaphoid, almost like the cursed warriors, the cursed knights or whatever in Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, the ones that are under the mountain, the oath breakers, I think they're often called. Those ghostly knight type characters, I imagined a number of, I did a bunch of Scaphoid customs repainting, the head a bunch of times. You can see the one in the middle, that's a repainted Brother Mandibulus head. And then the one all the way on the end there, that's actually a repainted skeleton head from the 2.0 kind of skeleton warrior. So I've done this before, and this is the recipe that I like to use. So once again, 1 part green, that deep green, 2 parts yellow. And what's going to happen is I'm going to dry brush that on. And what you see right here on this vampire head, that is exactly that color. That's what I got, that base color. And if I compare that to the Scaphoid head, and there he goes, if I compare that to the Scaphoid head, I will find that it's really, really close to that underlying base color. That's where I want to start, because the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that lemon yellow and I'm going to dry brush this on. Now, this is a point where you really want to be careful with this. You really want to layer this color on carefully at first. One of the things I love about dry brushing is the fact that you can be very, very controlled. You don't have to put just a solid base color on it. You can be very controlled, very deliberate in how you actually apply that paint. So you can see here that skeleton here, that yellowish color that's on the skeleton already, that has already had 1 base coat of yellow dry brushed onto it. I shouldn't say base coat. The base coat was that greenish, that limeish green. This has had the yellow on top of it. What I find is it usually takes maybe 2 subtle coats, 2 light coats of the yellow dry brushed on top. And then maybe I go with one more where I hit it a little more intensely in specific areas. Because if you look at that scaphoid head, what you will find is there are areas of it that are far more yellow than others. It's not a consistent color. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to shake this yellow up, put a little bit of yellow in my paint tray. Let me actually move the camera here. I'll bring the camera over so you can see a little bit more of what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do here is I've got my brush. I'm going to dip that in the yellow, and I'm really, really going to dry that off. And then right here, I'm just going to start to apply that yellow. And by brushing it on ever so lightly, you can build up that color. Just building up that color. And again, this skeleton head that I'm using right here, this is a custom piece from Wolf King Customs that they plan to offer down the road. But realistically, this would work with any head, whether you're working with a third-party 3D printed head like this, whether you're working with an official Mythic Legions head, basing it out in that flat black color and then brushing this on is totally what will work. I'll do it on this one. This has no yellow on it yet. So you'll see that first coat that I would do just by brushing it on. And you may be like, oh, why are you putting this on a vampire? But this is kind of cool. I mean, it looks kind of neat. I'm going to take a little bit of this blue tack. I'm going to put a little bit of blue tack on my scaphoid head. Put him right there. So that's kind of a cool look, right? Putting the vampire on that body. I like to think about these figures in different ways. So I'm just going to lightly brush on that yellow. And that's the whole thing. Once this dries, I can always come back and I can always hit it with some more coats. This is an interesting sculpture because it's got that really, really flat head. So the paint goes on a little bit different than like a skeleton that's got, you know, some cracks and everything, a little bit more textures in that head. A lot of textures in the facial area. But you can see after that first coat, it's not yellow enough. It's got too much green in there. So I'm going to let that dry because after that second coat, once you get that second coat on, it's a very, very different story. That second coat is really what starts to get it closer to the actual color. And one of the great things about the Scaphoid figure is while this head is connected to the neck, it's not connected to the other body parts, to the other bones. So just that little bit of separation, it's not like if you're painting a barbarian. When you're painting a barbarian head to go on a bare chest, the flesh of the head and the flesh of the chest are touching. So they've got to be really, really close or you'll see that variance. In this particular case, you won't really see the variance as much because they're not actually touching. But you can see what I'm doing here is I'm taking that brush and now I'm drying it off a little bit less and I'm adding some deeper colors, some deeper amounts of yellows on here to really have a few areas that are much, much more intense in terms of the color. And that's really all I'm going to do. And you can see that match. It looks really, really good, really nice and close. Okay. Now, the other piece, obviously, is the armor. So if I have the armor here, this armor it's a really interesting, very dark type color. The match that I like to use is another Vallejo, and this is Vallejo 801 Brass. So this is a metallic type color. What I find is a little bit of this very, very lightly dry brushed on, I think looks really, really good. So I'm going to put a little bit in my paint tray. I'm going to take a different paintbrush than I had. Dip it in the paint there. Now I'm going to really, really dry this off. I want there to be barely a hint of paint. And I'm going to dry brush this on to the metal helmet type parts. I really want this to be light because I want a lot of that black base to kind of shine through. I don't want to cover it because if you look at the paint that's on this armor, you can see a lot of that black, whether it's a black undertone or a black wash that's on top of it. I want to maintain that as much as possible in this actual piece. So I'm going to be very, very light. But this is a super quick paint. You saw how quickly I've painted this on camera. This has come really to life on camera. All I did before I started shooting this video was I based out this head in black, and I did one, the base coat of the lime green on the face, right? And then I did a light dry brush coat of the yellow. That's what I started with this head. So it's a multi-step process, but these are things that go pretty quickly. And because I'm dry brushing, this dries super, super fast. So you can see I've been very, very sporadic with the paint just by dry brushing. The sculpture itself, I get that nice match. It's looking really, really good. The paint, the head matches, this matches there. And I could take this a step further if I wanted. There's like some green type in the armor here. I could paint some of the green maybe around the rim of the helmet here. I could get some silver. The rivets on his armor are silver. What I'll probably do after this video is paint some of these rivets silver to bring that color in as well. But when it comes to actually matching the green of the skeleton and that kind of brass color of the armor, those are the ones that I use. That's the colors that I use. So hopefully you found that helpful. Once again, to reiterate, multi-step process. Base coat of black on the piece you're going to paint. Then an initial layer on top of the base coat that's kind of a limeish green. If you want to start with a lime green, if you find a lime green you really, really like, that's not a problem. You can totally start there. The reality is you're going to cover most of that base dark green with some dry brushing anyway. So there's got some variance in terms of how dark or how lime green it gets. What I do is 1 part deep green Vallejo to 2 parts lemon yellow. After that dries, and it dries pretty quickly. I let things dry by air, by the way. I know there's a lot of people that use the hair dryer to dry it a little quicker. I tend not to do that, but that's up to you if you want to do it. The dry brushing stuff dries so quickly, it's not a problem. So I dry brush on 1 coat of the yellow, let that dry, and then I came back and just right on camera here, you saw I did another dry brushed coat of the lemon yellow, allowed that to dry, hit a couple pieces of it with a little bit more intensity so I would get not just one color but some variance in there. Finally, I did the Vallejo brass to do the armor. The last piece you might want to do is, if you look at the Scaphoid figure, the teeth actually have a little bit of extra color on them. So what I like to do for the teeth is I like to use yet another Vallejo. This is Vallejo 976, and the color is called Buff. So what I like to do is I put a little bit of dab in here, and then I get a super fine tip brush. I've talked about this many times. I like to use these Winsor & Newton. This is the Series 7. It's a size 000. I like to use these. I get them on Amazon. What I do is I just take this and I just dab the tip of it. And this is not something you're ever going to be able to see me paint because it's so fine and so small. But I use just that little tip of paint and I just go over the teeth. So lift up my glasses because I have to see here. But what I'll do, just paint those teeth. And it just adds a little bit of color. And this is not something you have to do. But I think that this adds that little bit of color to the face area that really brings those teeth out. I like that a lot. So I just did the front ones here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it actually on camera, but just those front ones right there, just that little bit of extra paint, I really think helps bring out those details. So I'll finish all of this up off camera. And if you check my Instagram page, I'm sure I will post this before you know it. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you found this helpful. Again, with Scaphoid being a somewhat readily available figure now, I'm sure you're going to have lots of cool ideas for a way that you can customize Scaphoid, whether you pick up some custom heads from Legion Shop or Wolf King or one of the other providers out there that create these cool items, whether you paint existing Mythic Legions head to match these, or whether you even do something crazy like putting a vampire head on it. All cool options. Hopefully this paint recipe will help you do it. If you like this video, certainly give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Until next time,